On a cold February morning in Denver, Colorado, Michael Carter stood in his driveway staring at the house he had spent 15 years working to afford. Snow rested quietly on the roof, and a for sale sign stood firmly in the front yard. His wife, Emily, stepped outside carrying 2 mugs of coffee. Neither of them spoke for a while. Their 8-year-old son, Liam, and 12-year-old daughter, Sophie, were fastening their backpacks for school, unaware that within 6 months, they would be leaving the only country they had ever known. From the outside, the Carter family looked like they were living the American dream. Michael had a management position at a logistics company. Emily worked as a registered nurse at a respected hospital. Together they earned enough to own a beautiful home in a safe neighborhood, drive 2 reliable SUVs, and take an occasional family vacation. But what nobody saw was the price they were paying. Every weekday began before sunrise. Michael left the house at 6:00 a.m. and rarely returned before 7 p.m. Emily worked 12-hour hospital shifts, often including weekends and holidays. Family dinners became rare. Conversations happened through text messages. Even birthdays were sometimes celebrated days late because someone had to work. One evening, after another exhausting week, Liam asked a simple question. "Dad, why do you work so much if we never get to be together?" Michael didn't have an answer. That question echoed in his mind for weeks. Then came the moment that changed everything. Michael's company announced another round of layoffs. Friends he had worked beside for years packed their desks into cardboard boxes within an hour. Although Michael kept his job, he realized that years of loyalty offered no guarantee of security. That night, he sat at the kitchen table with Emily, surrounded by mortgage statements, insurance bills, student loan payments, and grocery receipts. "We're making more money than ever," Emily said quietly, "but it feels like we're falling further behind." Michael nodded. "We're surviving," he replied, "but we're not living." The conversation lasted until midnight. For the first time, they asked a question they had never dared to consider. What if success doesn't look the same for everyone? Over the next several months, they began researching families who had moved abroad. They watched interviews, read blogs, joined online communities, and spoke with Americans who had built new lives in countries like Portugal, Spain, and Costa Rica. Again and again, they heard the same message. People weren't leaving because they hated America. They were leaving because they wanted something different, more time, less stress, a stronger sense of community. The Carters made a decision that surprised everyone they knew. They would sell their house, simplify their lives, and move overseas. When they shared the news during a family barbecue on the 4th of July, silence filled the backyard. Michael's father shook his head. "You've spent your whole life chasing this dream." Michael smiled. "Maybe we were chasing someone else's dream." Friends questioned whether they were making a terrible mistake. Some believed they would return within a year. Others thought they were giving up everything they had worked for. But Michael and Emily no longer measured success by square footage, salaries, or promotions. They measured it by something much simpler: time together. The following months were a whirlwind of change. Furniture was sold. Closets were emptied. Boxes of old memories were donated or carefully packed. The children chose only a few favorite toys to take with them. Leaving wasn't easy. Every room in their house held memories: Christmas mornings, birthday parties, school projects taped to the refrigerator, and countless family movie nights on their final evening. They sat on the living room floor eating pizza because the furniture had already been moved. No television, no distractions. Just conversation at IT turned out to be one of the happiest nights they'd shared in years. 6 weeks later, they landed in Portugal. The pace of life immediately felt different. Instead of endless traffic and constant rushing, they found narrow cobblestone streets, neighborhood cafes, and parks filled with families well into the evening. People greeted each other by name. Children played outside until sunset. Meals lasted an hour instead of 15 minutes. Adjusting wasn't effortless. The language barrier created daily challenges. Simple errands took twice as long. Michael worked remotely across different time zones, often waking before dawn. Emily had to rebuild her nursing career from the ground up. The children missed their friends back home. There were moments of doubt, moments when they wondered if they had made the biggest mistake of their lives. But slowly, those doubts faded. Liam joined a local soccer team. Sophie discovered a love for photography, capturing the colorful streets and ocean sunsets. Emily found work at an international healthcare clinic. Michael finished his workday in time to walk along the beach with his family almost every evening. One afternoon, nearly 2 years after they had left America, Michael received a message from an old coworker. It read, "Do you ever regret leaving?" Michael looked up from his phone. Emily was laughing with the kids while collecting seashells along the shoreline. The Atlantic waves rolled gently onto the sand as the sun dipped below the horizon. He smiled and typed his reply. "I don't regret leaving. I only regret waiting so long." A few months later, the family returned to the United States for a short visit. They reunited with relatives, visited old friends, and drove through the neighborhood where they had once lived. Everything looked familiar: the grocery stores, the schools, the parks. Yet something inside them had changed as they prepared to fly back to Portugal. Sophie looked out the airport window at the departing planes. "Do you think we'll ever move back?" she asked. Michael wrapped an arm around her shoulder. "I don't know what the future holds," he said. "But home isn't just where you're born. Home is where you find peace." The Carter family didn't walk away from America because they had stopped loving it. They walked away because they realized that the American dream means different things to different people. For some, it's climbing the corporate ladder. For others, it's owning a bigger house or earning a higher salary. For the Carters, the dream became something far simpler and far more valuable: time around the dinner table, weekend adventures instead of overtime shifts, watching their children grow instead of watching the clock. They didn't abandon the American dream. They simply redefined it. And in doing so, they found a version of success that money alone could never buy.